Hello, everybody, and thanks for your trust. It's good to know that we have provided the project files for you. We're going to rely a lot on sculpting ZBrush, and we will create some alphas inside Substance 3D Designer. Of course, we're going to create these and learn how to create these. And I have provided the TIFF file for you. And a TIFF file has one of the best qualities. You can go and try to use these inside your sculptings in ZBrush. So when the time actually arrives, you will see how we create these. Of course, I have provided them so that you can follow along with no problem. And actually in here, I have provided some links to some of the useful Blender add-ons that you can take and try to investigate in. And in here, I have provided a link to grab free alphas. Because in future lessons where we try to sculpt ornamental details, I do not create them and use some alphas that I have grabbed from the net. So in this one, I have provided a link so that you can go and try to grab some tiling ornament alphas to sculpt. And of course, the Unreal Engine project file have been provided to you as well. When unpacking that, you will get this. You will open the Rise of the Dragons project file and you download this, open it, and you will get the scene inside Unreal Engine. And there are some considerations that you need to take. And one of them is that I have activated the ray tracing in here. If you want to get a bit of performance back and you do not have a ray tracing card, you can go into the project settings and in here find the rendering tab. And then in here you see that I have activated the support hardware ray tracing. You can turn this off and turn this use hardware ray tracing when available as well, to get a bit of performance back if you do not have a card that supports ray tracing. And I have opened the scene. Let me see the frame rate. You see this is created with a high quality and we're getting such a frame rate in here. If you're going to increase the performance, you can go and bring in the post-process volume up, because in here to take some screenshots and things like that, I've gone ahead and bumped up some of the settings there. So select the post-process and in the global illumination, in the lumen tab, you can come back in here and try to reduce these values. Of course, they are now by default set to a good performance value, but if you bump these up, you're going to get the frame rate drop. For example, let me go bring in the lumen final gather quality. You see that now we're getting around 40 frames per second. Now, if I try to bump this up to 20, you see now the quality drops 10 frames per second. So you'll need to have this in mind. If you want to get a good performance, you want to go to the project settings and disable the ray tracing, and using the post-process bring some of these qualities down to get a bit of performance back. And the next thing you want to have in mind is that the textures that I have provided are 4K. Most of these textures are 4K. For example, let me go in here on this one. Let me bring it up and you see that this texture has been set to 4K. We have provided the 4K quality to be the best quality possible. And if you want to get a bit of performance back, you can go show all advanced details and just look for size. And this is the maximum texture size. You can set this one to 2K to optimize the textures a bit, and this will help a lot with the performance of the scene. Of course, you can revert it back to the default because the imported version in here is still 4K. The 4K is in place, but the resolution that is going to be shown in the game has been set to 2K to get some of the performance back. So let's revert this and we get the 4K texture back. So these were some optimization techniques that you can use, and you can go try to investigate your time in this scene to see how we have created that and how things have been put together. Okay, in the next one we will start to explain a bit about the workflows and things like that, and we'll go on and create the scene. And I hope that you learn some things from this and put that into a good and fair use. So, see you in the course. Hello everybody, welcome to another tutorial. Very happy to be able to explore new ideas. And in this one, we're gonna go deep into ancient caves. And we're gonna create a cave that is belonging to an ancient civilization, a lost civilization, and those kinds of things. And we're gonna explore new environment art ideas that we have not explored before. So first of all, this is the reference board that I have gathered. And first things first, I'm going to take the time and thank Arthur Borgias to letting me use his concept. And this is the main concept that we are going for. Of course, as you see, this one is a stylized, and I'm not really that much into stylized work. We're going to do that realistic. And of course, we're going to expand this idea and expand the cave and maybe put a couple of more broken buildings, make the cave darker, make it more overgrown, gloomy, include a lot of mystery in this. And again, I'm going to thank Arthur Borges to allow me to use this concept. And as I was looking for references, I came across the Khmer civilization, and I found that the style of the building is really what I like to create and explore. It has a lot of complexity, and this one makes an awesome advanced environment art to tackle on. And do not worry, we have a lot of references to look at, and we're gonna go over the references to see what it is. But for now, let's focus on the main mood and composition. This is the main one that I'm going for. We're gonna create a cave that is, of course, exposed to the sunlight, as you see here. We have the sunlight coming through here, and we're gonna expand this, maybe create a cave or an destroyed building here, a destroyed building there, depending on the time that we have on this tutorial. And the goal here is to make it awesome to look at while not making it that much boring. Because I know that the longer the tutorial takes, the boring it becomes. So I was looking for references and I came across the Khmer architecture, and this is awesome for creating. And of course, we're not gonna create this one by one. We're gonna explore the designs, the motifs, and all kinds of things from these references and apply them to our own work. For example, this one makes awesome for creating a modular destroyed building of some sort. And of course, this one is going to be an advanced one because we have already covered the beginner and medium stuff before. So now we know that we're going to create an ancient cave with some destroyed building that belonged to a civilization long ago. And we're going to go for Khmer architecture. And this is the mood that I'm looking for. When searching for references, I really like these two. These two have awesome mood. They have the overgrown idea that I want, having a lot of foliage cover and the fog that you're seeing here. It's awesome, and I'm going to create something like this in these areas that are exposed to the sun. We're going to see a lot of the fog happening. And of course, you see that because the human interaction in here is kind of minimal, we see a lot of overgrown areas. And we're going to mimic them. We're going to create not only architecture, but also foliage. And of course, you know that this is an environment art course, not a foliage creation or, for example, building modeling or those kinds of things. For environment, the most important thing that we need to have is the consistency and the overall look of the environment. For example, for the main building, it kind of makes sense to put a lot of more time into this to make it more refined because this is the main focus of the environment. But for backstage props, just like some rocks in here, it doesn't actually make sense to go and make it full detail because that is the waste of time. And you want to put more focus and your time and energy on the things that are more important because the resources and the time for creating these is limited. And we're going to divide the time into more important pieces. So now that we know that we're going to create something like this, I got one of my references and blurred it out in Photoshop to create a color palette. And you see that this is somehow similar to this color palette that we are seeing here. We have mainly the greens, the grays, this white that is going to represent the fog in the scene, and some of these brown for the main buildings that are going to be here. So this color palette is a cool thing to have. Of course, I'm so moody, I might change this one in the future. But right now, I'm in such a mood to create something like this. And it's a good one to bring in an image that you like as a reference, and blur it out in Photoshop to see the main colors. And that is a very simple thing. You go in Photoshop and start to blur the image. And that way you're going to see the main colors, and you're going to pick the colors that you want from the image. For example, from here, I picked up this one. From this foreground area, I pick up this one. From this background area, I picked up this one. And this one, I came up to these references and picked up the color from that, because this reference image that I blurred didn't have any building of some sort. So I went through the images and picked up this color so that I know that this is somehow going to serve as the color of the buildings. Of course, these two are going to be for the buildings. This is going to be for the dark part, and this one for the bright part, because the building as well is going to be two-sided. One side on the bright side and one in the shadows. And this one is going to represent the areas that are exposed to the sun, just like these. So this is the main one that we are going to go. And as I said, we're gonna expand this cave. And as I said, we're going to create this one as the main building. Of course, not this one especially, but somehow something like this. We're going to create this one as the centerpiece, and maybe create a couple of more variation of the broken buildings in here and in here, and connect them using the stairway of some sort, or a rope or something. So as you see, this one gives us the main idea. But to explore more ideas and clarify the image in our mind, we need to have more references. And the more references that you have, the clearer the final image in your mind would be. So I went and gathered a lot more references. For example, in this image, you see that we see how stones are put together, how they are varied, how they are assembled, and these kinds of things. And the more references that you have, the more you know that what you're going to create. For example, in this one, you see that for ruined walls or some things, we can use this image to see how the buildings are put together, how they have placed the stones, and even how to sculpt the stones in ZBrush to do the job. So I have divided this into some categories, and let's go for the first one, which is the center building, which is this one. Excuse me, which is this one. Of course, as we said, we're not going to actually create this one by one. And the main thing that we are going to create is this one. You see that this is somehow similar to this one. Let me bring it here. And you see that they are totally similar. Not exactly similar, but somehow the idea is the same. It starts with a white platform and narrows down as it goes to the top. And in here, we have a destroyed column, or anything that you can call it. So now we know that we are going to create something like this. And of course, we are not alone in this one. We have more references to tackle the different parts. For example, in here, we are seeing how to break the stones. For example, how to sculpt bricks in ZBrush, and those kinds of things. How to detail them, how to break the walls, how to place them alongside each other. And having a good reference board will really help you to solve a lot of problems. For example, in this one, we are seeing that how a broken pillar would be in this environment, and these kinds of things. This is my reference board for the center building, and I'm going to create a secondary building as well. That one that we're going to create in this area, maybe. And we're going to connect them with a stairway, or with a rope, or a passage of some sort. I'm going to create that building, and I'm going to take the idea from that, maybe creating an entrance that goes into the cave, or basically creating something like this. We're not going to make this one super complex and super detailed, because this one is the main focus of the environment, and this one is going to be so far away from the player. Of course, the player is going to reach that, but we are not going to make that super detailed. We are going to make this one detailed, and because we are limited on time, you can go and explore the same ideas on that one. And as I said, the environment art, the most important thing, is the thing that the player is going to see the most. And it doesn't actually make sense to detail out a far building that is not going to be seen anyway. So this is the secondary building, and of course there's going to be a lot of ground and a stone placement on the ground. And you see in such a reference that these stones have created a pathway to the architecture that is there. So this is the one that we are going to use for the ground, and as well this is for the walls. You see the combination of the bricks, how different in size they are, how they are put together, and even how to sculpt them in ZBrush. And for sculpting ideas, we have this sculpting details, and these are mainly close-up images to see what details we can sculpt in ZBrush. You see, these are so detailed that we can get the ideas from. For example, in here, you see how defined these details are. And then we have this ornament, and this is mainly for the ornament parts and how to sculpt these ornaments that are going to be in the environment. As you see them here, these are mainly refined details that we're going to use. And then for the stairway as well, we have some references to look at. We're going to make that super detailed and explore modularity when creating this one. And of course, we are going to make that modular so that when we create something, we are able to duplicate that and create variations of it. And there's this tree, this overgrown tree that is present here. Of course, I have some ideas for it, but that really depends on the time frame and the amount of time that we are able to put on this tutorial. But I have this idea in mind that an overgrown tree is present in these parts. And as I said, this one is as well an optional thing that we might create. We could create some distant buildings. Of course, we're not going to make these modular. Of course, we could make these modular, but since these are some distant buildings that are going to be seen from here, for example, I might put a couple of them in these areas. And these are mainly outside of the cave. Of course, I might create them and I might not create them. Again, depending on the composition and how important they are, we might create them or not. So, as well as these ruined parts. And you see in here, in these images, we see that if a building falls apart, how these stones are going to be scattered, and those kinds of things. So basically, this is the reference image that we have, and now we're going to create that in Unreal Engine. Of course, the method that I go about creating environments is the iteration method. We go iterate by iterate. For example, you might be tempted to start right off in Blender and ZBrush and go and create such a building. It doesn't work that way. And your environment is going to be really an incomplete project, and you're going to abandon that project. First, we're going to create a blockout. And by blockout, I mean the main ideas of the environment, the main composition, how the buildings are going to be placed. And for those buildings, we're going to create simple buildings, simple meshes that represent these buildings somehow, to see what the dimensions are, how we're going to place these, how the player is going to go in the environment, if you're going to place gameplay into this. And when we made sure that everything is going to work and the idea is going to work, we go and refine these. And since we're going to go modular, we do a lot of planning. For example, we discovered the repetitive parts. For example, this one is a repetitive part. And instead of going and modeling this all the way, we create one part, one portion, and start to duplicate that to create the environment. Because the modularity makes it more efficient to create. And for example, creating this one as a hero building with only one mesh would require a lot of texture space, and it's going to be blurry. Trust me, you're not going to get good quality if you create this one by only creating it using one mesh. We're going to divide that into multiple pieces. We're going to plan, we're going to see the modularity in it and replicate the modularity in the design. As I said, modularity is a precious thing to learn, because when you create the kit, you're able to create variations from the same building. It takes a bit more to plan, but after the planning, you're going to execute the ideas a lot faster. And the softwares that we are going to work with in this tutorial are the Unreal Engine as the main render engine, and the software that we're going to bake all of the things in. Everything that we create is going to be put in here, and we're going to create an environment using Unreal Engine technologies, just like Nanite to create really high quality meshes without needing to reduce the quality of the mesh. For example, bringing in meshes from ZBrush into Unreal Engine if you want, without actually decimating the mesh to really see the high quality. And Lumen, that is the global lighting, dynamic global illumination system in Unreal Engine that allows for quick lighting creation in Unreal Engine that is going to be changed dynamically. And the Blender is going to be the main DCC app. We're going to do the blockouts in Blender. Of course, you can use any DCC app that you would like. The bare bones and the idea is the same throughout. But I'm happier to work with Blender. And after creating the blockouts in Blender, we bring them into ZBrush to sculpt them. Of course, you can use the same Blender for sculpting details, but we're gonna use ZBrush to detailing. And as I said, that is really dependent on you and which softwares that you're going to use. But for texturing as well, we're going to use Substance 3D Designer and Substance 3D Painter to texture the meshes and create tiling textures for the environment. And then after creating everything, we bring them all in Unreal Engine and do the composition, lighting, level design, material creation, and those kinds of things. Okay, now that we know the planning and the references and we know how to create the environment, in the next one, we're going to create the blockout inside Unreal Engine. And we create the blockout first to make sure that everything is going to work and the ideas are going to come along together. And the second, not to create really AAA meshes that are not going to be used anyway. For example, without blockout, you go and create a mesh, you put a lot of time into that mesh, and maybe you understand that you cannot use that mesh in an environment. And all of those hours are going to be wasted. And we're going to do the blockout to prevent a lot of wasted hours. So we are going to create the blockout in the next one. Okay, see you there.